Haverfordwest around the time of the haunting. And the more research I did into it, the more it turned out that this communication system was actually a Cold War weapon. And what it was there for was to demoralize enemy troops. It'd make them paranoid, it'd make them feel ill, homesick, etc. So I was very, very satisfied that my haunting was a psychological effect that was affecting us, our neighbors, our friends, everybody who was in the house. It wasn't exclusive to myself and my then girlfriend.
Right.
So a big UK magazine came to me and said, "Oh, we want to know more about this book." And I told them, look, it was about me and my girlfriend, but I hid behind a pseudonym because, you know, I was working through stuff. And they're like, cool. So they released the story. People were so supportive, going, oh, you know, mental health support. And, you know, I've had the same experience. And thank you for being so honest. And I'm a huge advocate for mental health now. And a few weeks later, I got an email from a woman, not only identified the house, which was a secret and will remain a secret because it's not my house, identified when she lived there and started telling me a story. And then she proved that she lived there as well. And her husband lived in the exact same house as me from 1989 to 91. And what happened to them makes my story like a trip to Disney World. It is the most surreal haunting I have ever come across. And I know it sounds like, oh, he's just really trying to sell us this book. I don't mind. I don't care if you read it or don't read it. You know, if you're into hauntings, there's not many books out there, I believe, has got such detail about a haunting. And so surreal, such strange imagery. So my world came tumbling down again because I was very confident that it was this. I had a reason why it happened. I believe there wasn't ghosts or it was this technology. That technology wasn't in existence or in use in my town at the time this happened. So we began the interview, and it is so insane what happened to them. And I could spend 5 hours just going through all the different things that happened, but I'll try and break it down into little sections for you. So like everything, it starts almost like a residual haunting, you know, little things, doors opening, cold spots, electrical equipment not working. And I kind of progressed then to a intelligent haunting, where whatever was happening in the house was reacting to what they were doing. And it all began when the man whose name is Di, which is short for David in Wales, Di was in the garden and he uncovered a load of bones in the garden. And it wasn't an Indian burial ground. We don't have Indian burial grounds in Wales, not that I know of. And it was, he believed it was a pet cemetery. But there was just a huge mass of animal bones. It turned out to be cat and dog bones. And the first part of the hauntings all revolved around animals. Like they could hear a dog barking in the house. I saw like a shadow of a dog like morph into a tree. Like really strange things. Now, Di and Anne's communication wasn't very strong at this time, and Di was keeping a lot from her, and she was keeping a lot from him. But this entity, this house, focused on her more than him, and Anne would often have like dreams or visions where she would be in the same house but 100 years before, during Victorian times. Brenda was saying about a pet cemetery. That was the first thing they thought it was. They rationalized that it was probably a pet cemetery, and it was just an old pet cemetery. So Anne has a dream, but it was almost like remote viewing, where she's watching events through someone else, and she has very little control of what's going on. So her dreams base her in the house 100 years before, and there was an old lady, very nasty looking old lady, and a very strange man, and some very neglected children. And she witnessed child abuse, incest, and severe animal cruelty. And it appeared that this family from the Victorian era were not only capturing cats and dogs. And I apologize to everyone out there. This is very hard. And Anne had a very, very difficult time to tell me this. It took a number of interviews to get to the bottom of some of these dreams. And they are just dreams. But then I believe that a higher being or a different being would communicate in different ways. It's not just knocks and bangs and Ouija boards. I think that, we should be very mindful of our thought processes and our dreams. And it appeared that these people were capturing animals, torturing animals, and cooking animals. And they were eating animals. And that made it feel very, very ill. The house started to really up the game. And I know what that's like because I lived it. But I was only there for 3 months, and that was enough for me. The stuff that happened to me was enough. What happened to these people lasted over 15, 16 months, and that would have broken me.
Yes,
And
I can't imagine you being able to survive that.
I wouldn't have. I'll just be honest with you, Kat. I wouldn't have.
I don't think so either.
No, I would have. It would have been game over for me. I don't know to what degree, but there was no way I would have come back from some of their stuff. So what this entity does, and it was not just me and my girlfriend at the time, it's not just the people from 1989, but I've spoken to other couples who lived there, neighbors, and it drives a wedge between you. It really gets into your head. And this thing feeds off your negativity. It feeds off your insecurities, your doubts. That's its food source. That's its energy supply. So what it was doing was it was doing stuff to convince Anne and Di that they were both having an affair. So Di broke his leg, which me and Kat can attest to, which is very unpleasant. He's housebound. He's downstairs. He's on pain medication. The toilet and the kitchen are downstairs. So he stays downstairs. His wife's upstairs. And, he's not getting out and about. He's putting on weight. His sleep routine's all over the place. And his wife still works. And every morning she gets out of bed. She makes the bed. She goes to work. She comes back. The house is reeking of perfume. The bed is unmade. She shouts at Di, "Who's been here? Why have you been upstairs?" He's like, "I haven't." And he believes, he hadn't been up there. She says, "It's stinking of perfume. Who's been here? What's going on?" And she was convinced he was having an affair. And he's like, "I haven't even been upstairs." And the phone would ring about 2 a.m. And Di would never hear it, even though he was sleeping downstairs next to the phone. And his wife would hear him talking to someone. So she got it into her head that some woman was drunk, calling him up. "I'm going to expose our affair. I'm going to tell your wife." So her behavior was very paranoid then. And they would have moments where they would practically split up, and she'd stay at his mum's, he'd stay at his brother's. And her mother said, "Look, he's not having an affair. The guy's ill. Just let it go. It's in your head. I can't smell perfume." So the next rational explanation for Anne was, "Oh, it's you. You're having an affair with my husband, my very own mother." And her behavior started getting increasingly strange. She stripped off and presented herself to her husband and said, "Am I not good enough for you?" Trying to instigate sex and crying. And it was very, very difficult for them both. Then one day,
she was just so vulnerable.
She was incredibly vulnerable. And he was staying at his brother's, and she went into her bedroom. She'd made the bed. She'd gone downstairs. She showered. The time it took the shower to go back upstairs, the bedroom was reeking of perfume, and all the bed covers and blankets had been shoved in a corner. And then she knew there was something very different going on. And on Christmas Day, they woke up to a horrendous smell in the house, and they couldn't get rid of the smell. All of these are very usual trappings of a haunting. There's probably not a lot that people are like, "Oh, okay, this just sounds like a regular haunting to me." Yeah, it starts off that way. And the longer you're exposed to this, the stranger it gets. So there's one bit where there was footprints across the room, a long stride of footprints across the room. So she's shouting at her husband. He comes down, there's no footprints. He's saying to her, "You're mad." And they have a huge row, and everything just comes out. You watch too much sport. We don't have enough sex. Everything just comes out. And both of them at the time are having very violent thoughts. Like Dave, he's a big guy, but he's not a violent guy. And he said he just thought about just knocking her out. You know, he just had this rage. And they noticed that one of the chairs in the armchair, there was a depression in the actual chair, like someone was sat there watching. And when they just watched the depression rise, as if someone had just stood up. And they said then it was like something was watching them argue. Something was being entertained by them.
Just enjoying the show, basically.
Just enjoying making them go mad. So there is kind of tied in with the whole ghost sex thing. Anne would wake up with the taste of something can anyone remember? I hope maybe never happened to you, but you know, a lot of people can relate to this. When you were little, your nan, your auntie, or your mum, when you'd eaten like chocolate or ice cream, would get a hanky or something, they'd lick it and they'd just wipe around your mouth.
Oh, yes.
And there was a horrible smell, a horrible taste with it, like tea or coffee and whatnot. And I call it granny spit. And Anne was waking up every morning with a taste of granny spit, okay? And she had a dream. I know we got a break coming up, okay? So she had a dream that the old lady from the house came into her bedroom, stripped off, got on her, and effectively had sex with her like she was a man, with her breasts dangling in her face while kissing her. And her husband came upstairs and saw that Anne was in bed with a shadow on top of her. So it looked like the reason Anne was having granny spit taste in her mouth every morning was because in this dream world, the old woman was having sex with her.
Which is yet another visual that you're going to take home with you tonight, everyone. That's awful, though. And we're going to discuss this more. We've got a 2-minute break coming up, and we will be right back.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
And we are back. We are discussing the newest book with Gavin Lee Davies. And I have to tell you that the experiences that happened in the house that he had lived in for a short time, and that the people he interviewed were in for much longer, I don't know what I would have done, Gavin, to cope with this. I know that you did not cope well, and you get frustrated with yourself about that sometimes, but there's no way someone can cope well with this.
Because it's hard. The biggest problem is, okay, and I guarantee that you've experienced this, and a lot of people listening have experienced this, is that if say you've been raped